Welcome to everyone. Just today we are going to discuss some important issues. Just to the lecture on accounts, classifications and presentation. This is first part, and second part, chart of accounts. These two matters now we will discuss. First on account classification and presentation. Here number 1 column, accounts title, classification, financial statements and normal balance. That means accounts title, here accounts payable, this is account title, and classification, this could be include in current liability, and in financial statement we will show it in our balance sheet, and our balance credit. In such way, just you will see here, we will see here accounts receivable, this is current asset, and financial statement presentation, balance sheet and normal balance debit. Here accumulated depreciation, building plant asset, this could be contra entry, and balance sheet, here credit balance. In financial statement, this is the balance sheet items, balance sheet item. Accumulated depreciation equipment, this is plant asset contra, or financial statement we will show it in our balance sheet and credit balance. Just like this, advertising expense, operating expense and income statement, debit balance. And allowance for doubtful accounts, classification, current asset contra, and financial statement, balance sheet and normal balance credit. And amortization expenses, operating expenses, income statement item. In financial statements we will show it in income statement and normal balance debit. And B, here alphabetically we will set up here, this is A, B, and bad debt expense, bond payable and building, operating expense, long-term liability and plant asset. Here we will show income statement, balance sheet and debit normal balance, credit normal balance and debit normal balance. And now C, alphabetic C, alphabet C, cash, common stock, copyrights and cost of goods sold. Here current asset, stockholders equity, intangible asset and cost of goods sold. And financial statement, balance sheet and income statement, cost of goods sold. And normal balance debit, cash, common stock normal balance credit, copyright debit balance and cost of goods sold debit balance. Now we will move next slide. Here accounts title, classification, financial statement, normal balance. Now D, debt and investment, depreciation expenses, discount on bond payable, dividends and dividends payable. And here current asset, long-term investment, and operating expenses, long-term liabilities, contra, temporary accounts close to retained earning, current liabilities. And debt investment, normal balance, financial statement, balance sheet, depreciation expenses, income statement, discount on bond payable, balance sheet, dividends, retained earning, earnings statement and dividend payable, balance sheet. And normal balance debit, depreciation expenses debit, accounts for bond payable debit balance and dividend payable credit balance. And E, alphabet E, equipment, plant asset, balance sheet, debit balance. Freight out, operating expenses, income statement, debit balance. Gain on disposal of plant asset, other income, income statements, credit. Goodwill, intangible asset, balance sheet, debit balance. I, income summary. Here please look here, income tax expenses, income tax payable, insurance expenses, interest expenses, interest payable, interest receivable, interest revenue or inventory. Here temporary accounts close to retained earning are income tax expenses, income tax payable, current liabilities, insurance expenses, operating expenses, interest expenses, others expenses, interest payable, current liability, interest receivable, current asset, interest revenue, others income, other income or inventory, current asset. And in our financial statements, income summary not applicable, and income tax expenses, income Statement, income tax payable, balance sheet, income expenses, this is income statement, income interest expenses, income statement, interest payable, balance sheet, interest receivable, balance sheet, interest revenue, income statement, and inventory, balance sheet. And income tax income summary, just we have another note here: income tax expenses debit, and income tax payable credit normal balance, insurance expenses normal debit balance, interest expenses normal debit balance, interest payable normal credit balance, interest receivable normal debit balance, interest revenue normal credit balance, and inventory debit balance. Now we will move next. And now accounts title, classification, financial statement, normal balance. Land, this is plant asset and balance sheet item and debit balance. Loss on disposal on plant asset, other expenses. This is income statement item, normal debit balance. Maintenance and repairs expenses, operating expenses, item and normal financial aspect, income statement item and debit balance. Mortgage payable, this is long-term liabilities classification and balance sheet item and credit balance normal. Notes payable, current liability, long-term liability, balance sheet, credit balance. And owners capital, owners equity, classification, owners equity and balance sheet item, credit balance. Owners drawing, temporary accounts close to owners capital, owners equity and normal debit balance. And P, patents, intangible asset, normal the balance sheet items and debit balance, paid in capital in excess of per common stock, stockholders equity, balance sheet, credit balance, paid in capital in excess of per um, uh, preferred stock, stockholders equity, balance sheet, credit balance. And preferred stock, stockholders equity, balance sheet, credit balance, premium on bond payable, long-term liability, balance sheet, credit balance, prepaid insurance, current asset, balance sheet, debit balance, and prepaid rent, current asset, balance sheet, and debit balance. Next, classification. R, rent expense. This is operating expenses, income statement, debit balance. Return earning, stockholders equity classification and balance sheet, and return earning statement item and credit balance. S, salaries and wages expenses. This is operating expenses, income statement, debit balance, salaries and wages payable, current liability classification, balance sheet item, credit balance normal. Sales discount, revenue, contra, income statement, debit balance. Sales returns and allowance, revenue, contra, income statement, debit balance, sales revenue, income statement, credit balance, selling expenses, operating expense, income statement, debit balance, service revenue, income statement, normal credit balance, and stock investment, current asset, long-term investment, a balance sheet, normal debit balance. Supplies, current asset, balance sheet, normal debit balance. Supplies expenses, operating expenses classification, financial statement will show it income statement and debit balance. T, treasury stock equity contra, balance sheet item, debit balance. Unearned service revenue, U, current liability, balance sheet item and credit balance normal, or utilities expenses, operating expenses, income statement, normal debit balance. Now sort of accounts. Asset items, liability items, owners and stockholders equity item, revenue item, or expense item. Here asset item, cash, account receivable, allowance for doubtful accounts, interest receivable, inventory, supplies, prepaid insurance, prepaid rent, land, equipment, accumulated depreciation, equipment, building, accumulated depreciation, building, copyright, goodwill, patent. Liabilities, notes payable, accounts payable, unearned service revenue, salaries and wages payable, unearned rent revenue, interest payable, dividend payable, income tax payable, bond payable, discount on bond payable, premium on bonds payable, or mortgage payable. Owners and stockholders equity, owners capital, owners drawing, common stock, paid in capital in excess per common stock, preferred stock, paid in capital in excess per preferred stock, treasury stock, return earning, dividends, or income summary. Revenue, service revenue, sales discount, sales return and allowance, uh, interest revenue, gain on disposal of plant asset. And expenses, advertising expenses, amortization expenses, bad debt expenses, cost of goods sold, depreciation expenses, freight out, income tax expenses, insurance expenses, interest expenses, loss and disposal of plant asset, maintenance and repairs expenses, rent expenses, salaries and wages expenses, supplies expenses, utilities expenses. Thank you so much for joining with us.